If you sit in on an HR meeting today, you will likely hear a familiar complaint. Older management is struggling to figure out a new influx of young workers who seem entirely unwilling to follow the standard corporate playbook. The labels attached to this cohort are almost universal. They are called lazy, entitled, hopelessly addicted to their screens, and somehow already burning out by the age of 22. Trying to diagnose these behaviors as a sudden drop in work ethic or a moral failing leads to a dead end. The old metrics simply do not map onto the current reality. To understand what is actually happening, we have to view these behaviors as a highly logical stimulus and response strategy. Society often brushes this off as nihilism. In reality, we are watching an entire generation exhibit high-level pattern recognition to survive an environment that is deeply unstable. For decades, the American dream operated on a predictable equation. You put in the hard work, you stayed loyal to your employer, and in exchange, you could reasonably expect a stable career and homeownership. This chart shows the skyrocketing trajectory of home prices over 4 decades. While previous generations bought in on a single salary, costs now aggressively outpace inflation. Adding a second line for household income clarifies the problem. Wages have completely flatlined over the same timeline. The financial milestones that older adults achieved easily are now mathematically out of reach for a 22-year-old starting out today. Beyond the housing math, this generation watched the illusion of systemic stability shatter during the 2008 financial crisis. They were in elementary school when they saw their parents quietly panicking over lost jobs and foreclosed homes. Then there is the psychological pressure. Gen Z grew up navigating something psychologists term context collapse. A situation teachers exists in the same digital space simultaneously. Their awkward, formative mistakes were permanently recorded and amplified by global algorithms. In the physical world, their environment was equally tense. Standard childhood routines were interrupted by intense physical threat protocols, making active shooter drills as common as fire drills. And right at the exact moment they were meant to transition into independent adulthood, a global pandemic locked the world down, stripping away vital social development and canceling first jobs and graduations. Combine a collapsed economy, a permanently recorded digital adolescence, and constant physical unpredictability. In an environment like this, traditional long-term planning is an evolutionary disadvantage. When corporate loyalty no longer guarantees a house or a secure retirement, preserving your mental energy is the only logical investment left. Setting strict boundaries and refusing to work unpaid overtime acts as a calculated defense mechanism. This calculation extends to politics. They look at a two-party system and see both sides as equally complicit in economic exploitation and cultural chaos, leading to a profound disillusionment with traditional voting blocs. When faced with existential threats like ecological collapse, the response isn't traditional panic. Instead, it manifests as dark, nihilistic meme culture, a way to cope with caring deeply about a future they cannot control. Socially, they live out a strange paradox. They have more tools to reach people than any cohort in human history, yet study after study shows they report the highest rates of loneliness. To survive the constant, algorithm-driven scrutiny of the internet, they utilize strategic self-presentation. They curate a protected, surface-level public persona that feels relatable, while withholding enough of their true selves to avoid being canceled or attacked. Ultimately, Gen Z has accurately assessed the old social contract. They ran the numbers, realized the return on investment was terrible, and intentionally refused to sign it. This hyper-awareness creates a trap, something we can call the Sedation Paradox. Despite seeing exactly how broken the economic and political systems are, Gen Z often feels entirely powerless to enact any real-world change. Historically, when populations grew this frustrated, the result was a tangible physical revolution. Massive crowds would gather in the streets, demand reforms, and physically dismantle the barriers of the old regimes. Today, digital conveniences drain that revolutionary energy. Addictive short-form content and algorithmic dim scrolling act as a sedative, keeping isolated individuals locked into their screens instead of organizing in the streets. Because of this, we are not going to see a loud, boots-on-the-ground revolution. Instead, Gen Z is executing a quiet renegotiation of the fundamental rules of adulthood. They're actively protecting their mental health, demanding flexibility in their schedules, and fiercely guarding their personal authenticity. In a deeply unpredictable economy, these are the only assets that a corporation cannot lay off or repossess. Society has to stop demanding that this generation conform to a world that no longer exists. These psychological adaptations serve as the exact blueprint required to survive the new reality.